Something very unusual happened behind the scenes of the Dallas Cowboys just days before the draft. And according to multiple reports, one of the team's most trusted talent evaluators was suddenly blocked from participating in the process. Not quietly reassigned, not given a different role, but effectively shut out. And here's the part that caught my attention immediately. The organization never publicly explained why. Now, if you follow the NFL even casually, you know the draft is basically the lifeblood of a franchise. Every scout, every evaluator, every opinion matters because one pick can shape the next decade. So when a top scout, someone who reportedly spent years building a reputation inside the Cowboys scouting department, was abruptly kept away from the draft room, you have to ask the obvious question: what exactly happened? According to several reports circulating among league insiders, the decision wasn't random. Sources claim there had been tension building behind the scenes for weeks, possibly even months leading up to draft week. And if those reports are accurate, the situation reportedly reached a point where team leadership felt they had no choice but to remove the scout from draft preparations entirely. Now, here's where the story gets interesting, because depending on which insider you listen to, the explanation changes slightly. Some league observers believe the issue may have been related to disagreements over player evaluations. That might sound small, but trust me, inside a draft war room, those disagreements can become intense. Imagine spending months scouting prospects, watching film until midnight, building your entire professional reputation on your evaluations, and then someone higher up completely dismisses your conclusions. According to sources familiar with the situation, there may have been strong internal debates about certain prospects on the Cowboys draft board, and apparently, one scout's stance became so firm and so different from others that it created friction inside the building. Now, to be fair, disagreements in scouting departments happen all the time. In fact, they're usually encouraged because different perspectives can actually strengthen the final decision. But reports suggest this particular situation might have gone beyond normal debate. Some insiders claim the disagreement allegedly escalated into a conflict over how certain information was being shared internally. And if that sounds vague, it's because the Cowboys themselves have not officially confirmed the details, which, honestly, only makes people more curious. When a franchise known for operating under the bright lights suddenly becomes extremely quiet about something like this, people start connecting dots. I'll be honest here, this is where my own curiosity really kicked in, because the Cowboys are one of the most transparent organizations when it comes to media access. Owner Jerry Jones is famous for speaking openly about almost everything. Yet on this specific issue, there has been very little public explanation. That silence has led to another theory circulating among league analysts. Some believe the decision may have been tied to concerns about internal communication protocols. In other words, sources claim there may have been worries about sensitive scouting information being shared outside the immediate decision-making group. Now, let me pause for a second because that sounds dramatic, but again, nothing official has confirmed this claim. It's simply what insiders have been speculating about. And speculation spreads quickly during draft season. Teams guard their draft boards like state secrets. One leaked evaluation can completely change how other teams approach their picks. So if leadership believed even a small risk existed regarding internal information flow, it could explain why they acted quickly. But here's the twist that keeps the story fascinating. The scout involved reportedly had a long history with the organization. This wasn't someone who just joined the team last year. According to reports, this individual had spent years building relationships inside the scouting department and was considered a respected voice in player evaluation meetings, which makes the sudden exclusion even more surprising. Because normally when an experienced scout and a franchise part ways, it's done quietly during the offseason, not in the middle of the most important decision week of the year. And that timing raises another question that analysts across sports media have been debating ever since the story surfaced. If the issue had truly been building for months, why wait until just before the draft to take action? Some insiders believe the situation may have reached a tipping point during final draft meetings. Those meetings are where scouts, coaches, and executives finalize their rankings and decide which prospects the team will pursue. Emotions can run high in those rooms because careers are literally on the line. A scout might spend an entire season advocating for a player only to see that player removed from the board at the last moment. According to reports, one of those meetings may have been the moment where tensions finally boiled over, and if that's accurate, leadership may have decided the best solution was to remove the source of the conflict rather than risk disruption during draft day. Now, let's take a step back for a second because situations like this actually reveal something interesting about how NFL teams operate. From the outside, fans often imagine scouting departments as smooth, organized machines where everyone works in perfect harmony. But the reality, according to many former scouts, is much messier. Strong opinions collide constantly. Debates get loud. Film sessions turn into arguments about footwork, decision-making, or whether a prospect's college performance will translate to the professional level. That tension is part of the process, and honestly, sometimes it produces great results. But every once in a while, the debate crosses a line that leadership isn't comfortable with. When that happens, organizations have to make quick decisions. That appears, at least according to reports, to be what may have happened here. Still, even with those possible explanations, one mystery remains unresolved. The Cowboys went through the entire draft without publicly addressing the situation. No detailed press conference, no long statement explaining the decision, just a quiet continuation of business as usual. And that silence has led to some analysts wondering whether the team simply wants the story to fade away. Because, let's face it, the NFL draft generates enough headlines on its own. New players arrive, fans analyze every pick, highlight reels dominate sports media. In the middle of all that excitement, a behind-the-scenes personnel issue can easily disappear from the spotlight. But insiders around the league haven't forgotten. In fact, several analysts have pointed out that scouting departments across the NFL are surprisingly interconnected. People move from team to team, relationships follow them. So when something unusual happens in one organization, word travels quickly through the entire league. And that's why this story continues to spark discussion long after the draft ended. Now, here's where I want to add my own perspective for a moment. Personally, I think situations like this remind us that NFL teams are still human organizations. Behind the logos, the statistics, and the television coverage, there are real people making difficult decisions under enormous pressure. Millions of fans are watching. Careers depend on getting draft picks right. If leadership believed a distraction might interfere with that process, it's understandable that they would act quickly, even if the decision seemed dramatic from the outside. At the same time, transparency often helps prevent speculation from spiraling out of control. And in this case, the lack of detailed explanation has allowed dozens of theories to circulate online. Some are probably exaggerated, others might contain pieces of truth, but without official confirmation, the full story remains partially hidden. What we do know is that the Cowboys completed their draft strategy without the involvement of one of their previously trusted scouts. We also know the organization has not publicly clarified the exact reason for the decision, and until someone inside the building decides to share more details, the situation will remain one of those intriguing NFL mysteries that analysts revisit every draft season. Because if there's one thing sports fans love almost as much as the games themselves, it's the behind-the-scenes drama that shapes the decisions we see on the field. And honestly, I get it. The draft is like a giant puzzle. Every pick, every evaluation, every disagreement contributes to the final picture. So when a key voice suddenly disappears from that process, curiosity is inevitable. Maybe someday the full explanation will come out in an interview or a memoir from someone involved. That tends to happen years later when people feel comfortable discussing what really happened. Until then, all we can do is analyze the clues that insiders have shared and try to understand the pressures inside one of the most profile franchises in sports. And if you're a Cowboys fan, there's another layer to this story, because ultimately what matters most is whether the players selected in that draft become stars on the field. If the picks succeed, the controversy will probably fade into history. But if the selections struggle, you can bet this mysterious decision will be brought up again and again as people ask whether removing that scout had any impact on the final draft board. That's the fascinating part about stories like this. They never truly end on draft night. Their real outcome unfolds over years as the players develop and the franchise moves forward. And somewhere in the background, the unanswered question remains quietly hanging in the air. What exactly happened inside that Cowboys draft room, and why did leadership feel the need to make such a dramatic move at the most critical moment of the year?